Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here in front of y'all. I'm not excited about the reason we're here, but I do respect everybody here. Every one of y'all got a responsibility just like I do as a citizen. I represent Carolina for All, and one of the things we do in part of our mission is to defend democracy. And that's why I got up early and got dressed and got on down here, because I want to defend democracy. And one thing that came across my mind is my great aunt, Zelma Blackman, used to teach me in Sunday school church in Lancaster County where I grew up. And what my aunt taught me was the Golden Rule. And I'm sure everybody in here heard about the Golden Rule. You know, it's 124 senators, House of Representative members, and I would pray at least half of those members would understand the Golden Rule and would respect the Golden Rule and would behave in a manner where they don't attack citizens of South Carolina right to vote, dilute their ability to elect people to represent them. I would hope that we have at least 50% of those House of Representative members, Republicans and Democrats, that respect me and treat me with dignity. I'm a human being just like they are. And I deserve the ability to elect people to represent me. I would hope that y'all would consider the $2 point whatever million extra you're going to add to our budget. It makes no sense to hurry, rush to do something that's going to hurt and harm people that you're supposed to love and respect, your neighbor. It makes no sense. Rushing to do something to take away our right to vote as citizens puzzles me. And I'll end by saying that if there is not 50% of the members of the House of Representatives in the state of South Carolina in 2026, I hope we got 50% of the citizens to believe the same thing, the same way I do, and respect the Golden Rule and understand the Constitution. I really do think we do have that in the state of South Carolina, and we're going to bet on that. And everybody in this room going to understand that, and they're going to have a choice. And we're going to make sure the rest of the public have that same choice, and they go vote. Thank you.
Nicole Sanchez.
My name is Nicole Sanchez, and I'm the president of Better Ballot South Carolina. Thank you for hearing me today. As our name suggests, we're all about improving the ballot for voters. We want to see increased voter turnout, real choice on the ballot, and fair and efficient elections. Redistricting at this point in time does not serve any of those goals or the people of South Carolina. It's been said that mid-decade redistricting is now common, but the ballots have been printed. Some of those ballots, ranked ballots, have been mailed to absentee voters. Some have been returned and received. We've heard this. Voting in the primaries is always low, 14% in the last election. And now you want to move part of the election to August. Will that lead to increased voter turnout? I think not. Having a separate election will tank voter participation even more and cost a bundle. More than $2 million. And don't forget about the runoffs. With this election schedule, people will be expected to turn out for 5 elections this year. We heard from the director of the Election Commission. You can change the maps, but it will be difficult, and it will be difficult, but it is possible. It will lead to voter confusion. About 300 ballots have already been returned. Those are voters who were denying their voice. Redrawing the maps at this stage is a terrible idea, period. But we're not opposed to redrawing maps if voters have adequate time to adjust and the maps are fair. Better Ballot SC is all about fair maps. And if you want fair maps in the future, when voters have time to adjust, we're happy to be part of that conversation. That conversation should focus on how to make maps actually fair. As recent as December 2025, a majority of South Carolina residents in a Winthrop poll stated that they didn't want maps to prevent voters of a particular race or a particular party from electing their candidate of choice. The majority of South Carolinians want fair maps. I will say that again. The majority of South Carolinians want fair maps. So how do you achieve fair maps? People self-sort, people of similar racial and ages vote differently. So how do you ensure that everyone is represented? 2 words: proportional representation. Proportional representation is exactly as it sounds. Everyone gets a real shot at having someone represent them. It's fair. As a quick example, in a district with 3 people, if there are 60% of people who vote for Republicans and 40% who vote for Democrats, you get 2 Republican representatives and 1 Democratic one. Sounds fair to me. Everyone has the option of getting someone who can represent them. And third parties have a chance to get someone in as well, like the Libertarians or the Greens or the Alliance. Fair representation. It reflects what the people want. Proportionally. So please, let's keep the map that voters are expecting. And in the future, let's give them what they want: fair maps. Thank you.
Jace Woodrum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Jace Woodrum, and I'm the Executive Director of the ACLU of South Carolina. I want to start by addressing the misleading statements I've heard from some legislators about the purpose of this bill. In particular, I've heard Representative Rankin, the sponsor, call the current map a gerrymander that needs to be fixed by this bill. But as Representative Bamberg said earlier, the ACLU challenged the current map as a racial gerrymander in federal court, and many of you swore under oath that race had nothing to do with its creation. In fact, Chairman Jordan and Representative Bamberg each personally testified at trial and assured the court that race wasn't considered in the composition of the congressional redistricting plan. The United States Supreme Court agreed with you and ruled that the map was not a racial gerrymander. That's why I think it's important to recognize that no one is here to fix a gerrymander. We are here because the White House wants to undermine the will of the voters. We are here because the White House wants to ensure that Democratic and independent voters in South Carolina, a group that combine to account for more than half the voters in this state, they want them completely unrepresented in the United States Congress. Now, I have 3 reasons why you should stick up for ordinary South Carolinians, the folks who put you here, and reject this bill. Number 1, you've already heard the primary elections have already begun. Thousands of absentee ballots have been mailed. Many have been returned. Changing our maps undermines trust in our elections. A lawmaker in favor of election integrity cannot be in favor of this bill. Number 2, redistricting solely to rig election outcomes for a party shamelessly undermines our regular democratic process. Lawmakers shouldn't be afraid of their voters. You should have to make your case to South Carolinians and earn their votes. If politicians can rig the next election to stay in power, they'll serve their own interests and not the voters. And 3, you've been warned not to do this by the state Supreme Court. Last year, the ACLU filed another case in state court challenging the current map as a partisan gerrymander. Now, while the court dismissed our case, Chief Justice Kittredge and Justice Hill wrote separately to clarify that the court was not making a categorical rule that all partisan gerrymanders are constitutional. As members of this committee know from experience, litigation takes time, money, and energy that is better spent on issues that matter to the people. The $2 million in taxpayer funds that the House added to its budget is likely not enough to defend this map in court. I urge the members of this committee to vote no on H. 5683. I'm happy to answer questions.
We do have some questions. Representative Bamberg, I think I heard you. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony here today. From your view at the ACLU, would you agree that this is setting a very, very troubling precedent if we go this route in this state? With these elections and with the numbers in politics, and I don't care, right now it's Republicans that have a supermajority, but it would be the same if Democrats had a supermajority. Are we setting a bad precedent if just because someone has a supermajority, if they don't like the outcome of an election cycle, they wield that to just go pervert the election process to change the results? Is that a bad precedent to set?
I think it's extremely troubling, right? So when voters are unhappy with their representatives, they should be able to vote them out of office. This process essentially erases that possibility by rigging our maps and ensuring that there is no way that an incumbent would lose. There's no way, in fact, in this map that a Republican would lose.
Or in the scenario that there's a Republican in Congress that some citizens don't like, some state elected officials don't like, this would set the precedent for the General Assembly coming in to fudge their lines to get rid of them, right?
Absolutely. I mean, what we have here, voters should pick their elected officials. What we have is elected officials picking their voters.
Thank you.
Representative Wetmore.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being here. I was glad to hear you testify about some of the earlier cases. I know that Ms. Teague testified about the state level, and y'all, of course, were involved in the federal. Do you recall when the Supreme Court upheld our map? Justice Alito, the same writer of the Calais opinion here, said, quote, "There is no direct evidence that supports the district court's finding that race predominated the design of District 1. He called that approach seriously misguided." So Justice Alito found or held that race was not a factor. And as you pointed out in your testimony, we actually had several folks here and many other representatives on behalf of the House and Senate testify that race was not a factor, and then that was upheld by the same justice that wrote the Kelly opinion. So I think it's really more of a comment, but can you sort of reiterate, we heard from other speakers that that was one of the stated goals today. Is that I'm not imagining that, right?
The bill sponsor, Representative Rankin, posted on Facebook, I think it was yesterday I saw it, that this bill corrects a gerrymander. So either he's calling all of you liars because you testified that it wasn't, or he's just wrong and he has a different motivation for bringing this bill forward. I'm not sure. He's not here, and I'm not going to suggest that I know his motivations.
Thank you.
All right. Representative Mitchell.
Thanks, sir. I do have a question, and of course, I know that we don't have numbers, but in looking at this proposed map, if you look at what is proposed to be the new 6th and the new 2nd, wouldn't you agree that in the way that this is proposed, and I really don't have any understanding, but you're taking what is normally underserved areas which have less population, such as the PD, and then Representative Bamberg's area, which would be number 2, would this not give them an opportunity to have congressional representation in areas that are normally dominated by Charlotte or Horry County or Richland County?
So I did have the opportunity to look at some numbers. And what the numbers show is that essentially none of these districts, except for one, are within 10 points of on a partisan lean. And you heard, what sounded like expert testimony earlier, that if what the legislature wants to do is ensure that we are sending 7 Republicans to Congress, this map will do that. And that, in fact, it seems to me that this map was created with that intended goal. And I think the chairman sort of stated that, the political goal at the top of this meeting. So I was able to look at the numbers. It accomplishes that goal. And I'm just going to be real with you. That sounds a lot to me like cheating.
Well, and my question is based more on geography, just because of where I live is in between the 5th and 7th. So, of course, with the 5th, you're always going to have somebody from York County, because that's where the population is. That's just a fact. In the 7th district, where Representative Jordan and I live, you're always going to have somebody from Horry County right now, because that's where the population is. That's a fact. So I just wonder if, for just the sake of argument, if the proposed 6th and the proposed 2nd doesn't give individuals that live in rural areas that are often overlooked an opportunity to possibly have a Congressman Bamberg or someone else that is not from the greater Charlotte or the Grand Strand or from Richland or Lexington County in the 2nd district.
I certainly think it's a good idea for us to be looking at the lines as geography. But let me tell you, so from my experience, I grew up in what would become District 3. I grew up in Senator Cash's district. My parents still live there. They are tried and true Republicans. And now Richland County, where I live, is in their same district. I live 2 hours from them. We are just about as different as you could imagine. So what I'm suggesting is that if that's how this map was drawn, if that was the goal of this map, I don't think this is the map we'd be looking at. Now, maybe there's some unintended or intended consequences of this place or this place, but we got to look at the whole. And there's so many examples. My own example, yours might sound really good. Mine doesn't sound good. Mine doesn't sound like it. I live in Richland County, and I've got the same representative as my parents in Piedmont. Doesn't make much sense to me.
Thank you for answering my question.
Absolutely, Representative. Thank you for them.
Representative Bamberg. Or is it Congressman Bamberg? Katie Mitchell's.
Congratulations on your promotion, sir.
I know, right? Jeez. Let's go over some numbers real quick. And the testimony this morning we heard, let's talk about proposed seat 2. That it was a Aiken, Lexington, Richland-centered congressional seat, right? Did you hear that earlier?
I did.
All right. The guidelines that we passed at the beginning of this meeting talks about equal population in paragraph 4, and it specifically says that the ideal population for congressional districts shall be 731,204. That's the number, okay? 731,204. Now, I did some math while I was sitting here. The population per the census in Lexington, 293,991. In Aiken, 179,245. That total is 473,236.
I believe you.
So you now go off of the other counties that would be in that congressional seat. Richland, Calhoun, Orangeburg, Bamberg, Barnwell, Allendale, Hampton. 7 counties. 2 of the counties in that seat are going to equate for 473,000 and change, which means those other 7 counties, only 250,000 people or so. I lived in Bamberg my whole life. And I might be Black Moses to a lot of people, but that still looked like an uphill battle for an African American male or female or any Democrat in a district that's drawn like that. And what I see when I look at the 2nd, the 6th, and the 5th is I see a stronghold like Richland County getting diluted and put in 3 separate congressional districts or 4 separate congressional districts, which to me is not a proper way to do a map.
Yeah.
What do you think about all that?
You know, I think it is important. So I've had, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds to look at this map, right? I mean, you know, this is quick. Y'all said this is moving so fast. So there are probably a lot of people who make maps who could tell you more about this map. What I can tell you is about the old map where we sued. And, you know, they've got all these computer programs, and you can put those redistricting guidelines in there, and they'll spit out, you know, all these different kinds of plans. And you know, in the 10,000 plans that were spit out last time, we couldn't get a plan like what you all concocted. I don't know if we can get this plan, right? But we seem to be really stretching the bounds of what our traditional redistricting principles should be and not taking into consideration some of what we could be taking into consideration, because it seems like the guiding light, the North Star, is always to rig the maps. And so we're not taking into consideration these other dynamics that you are lifting up.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, thank you for your testimony. Matthew Butler. While Mr. Butler's coming, let me take a moment and welcome and thank Representative McDaniel and Representative Grant for being with us. Thank you all for being here. You're recognized, Mr. Butler.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Matthew Butler, and I also work at the ACLU of South Carolina, but today I'm here as a private citizen and resident in Columbia and voicing opposition to H5684. I'm a native of Sherrill, South Carolina, up there in the PD, and I've been proud to call Columbia and the Midlands home for the better part of the last 20 years. With a brief return home to Sherrill during the COVID era to help take care of my parents. And in January of this year, I became a first-time homeowner here in North Columbia. Now, in the last 3 months, I've been doing what any new homeowner does, figuring things out. What's the best grocery store that makes the most sense? Where to find the cheapest gas? The best place to grab a bottle of wine after a long day here with you fine people. I've even figured out the optimal time to place a breakfast order on the Burger King app to miss the drive-through line traffic. And just literally last week, I finally cracked the code on my commute. Ridgewood over to Sumter by way of Anthony and Marion and Geiger Streets. It took me long enough considering I've lived here on and off for the past 20 years. All that to say, even when you know a place, it still takes time to understand how to navigate it. And that's why I'm here. Because what the joint resolution proposes is to change the timeline for congressional redistricting at breakneck speed. A bill introduced yesterday, taken up today, and Mr. Chairman, you're expecting to have a vote on it today, and you're expecting voters and candidates alike to just keep up. I'm still getting the bearings in my own neighborhood. And now we're talking about asking voters across South Carolina to quickly understand new district lines, a new election timeline, and a whole new political landscape, all while an election cycle is currently underway. Candidates, whether they've already declared or are thinking about it, are being told that they have about 30 days to figure out where they stand, literally and politically. And voters, they're going to be left wondering why they've been getting mailers, emails, maybe even shaking the hands with a candidate who suddenly isn't in their district anymore, let alone, as we've heard earlier, voting for them on a ballot that, does it count? This doesn't make sense in a 250-year-old republic. This isn't just fast, it's disorienting. Elections depend on some basic level of stability. People need time to understand who represents them, who's running, and where they're supposed to vote. This resolution takes that time away. And when you take time away from voters, you take away their ability to participate in a meaningful way. That's not how this is supposed to work. I urge you to reject the resolution H5684. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Butler, before I let you go, you brought it up, croissant or biscuit?
You know what? It's the double sausage croissant.
All right, I missed breakfast, so thank you. Chris Hemsel.
Great job, Mr. Chairman, deciphering my handwriting. Thank you.
I've seen it before. That's the only advantage I had. You're recognized, Mr. Hemsel.
Thank you. I'm Chris Hemsel. I'm a retired Army colonel, having spent 30 years on active duty, and probably the most conservative person in this room. And for the past 10 years, I've made Columbia my home. Today, I'm speaking to you on behalf of the Veterans for All Voters South Carolina, a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization fighting for the responsible government, accountable politicians, civility, and a more perfect union through open and competitive elections. We ask that you vote no on H 5683 and 5684. And you ask why. Our research demonstrates that competitive elections make better politics and more just laws. But first, I must ask you all a few questions. Who thinks gerrymandering is good for democracy? Who thinks gerrymandering makes for a more perfect union? Who thinks gerrymandering establishes justice? Who thinks gerrymandering establishes and ensures domestic tranquility? Who thinks gerrymandering provides for the common defense? Who thinks gerrymandering promotes the general welfare? Who thinks gerrymandering secures the bestings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity? Who thinks gerrymandering provides for competitive elections and a responsive government? Nobody. We all know gerrymandering is wrong. So why are we doing it? Gerrymandering as a practice is unfair, stifles citizens' voices, eliminates competitive elections, turns voters apathetic, and increases the power of the party over the people. If we want to form a more perfect union, the practice of gerrymandering must stop now. And it must start now in South Carolina, where the Revolutionary was won and fought 250 years ago. Today, only 43% of South Carolinians trust the state government to do what's best for the people. This mistrust comes from our gerrymandered districts. Non-competitive politics leads to mistrust of government. If people feel their voices are not heard, they will take it to the streets. The congressional district these bills propose severely weakens the voice of the urban populations in Columbia and Charleston and the black vote across the state. But you all know that. Columbia and Charleston voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election and for Nikki Haley in the GOP primary. That map is a revenge and retribution map. Columbia and Richland County get split between 3 different congressional districts, and Charleston is divided into 2 districts. These congressional districts do 2 things: make sure there are no blue dots in South Carolina, and that the people in Columbia, Charleston, and the black voters across the state are minorities in their U.S. congressional districts, severely weakening their political voice. Using my own personal experience with the new districts, I shift from the 2nd Congressional District to the 5th Congressional. Can someone explain to me how the federal government issues are the same in Northeast Richland County, just across the interstate from I-20? I hear the rifle ranges, music to my ears. Just across the interstate from Fort Jackson are the same as the good people of Cherokee County. I tell you, the representative for York County is not going to come down to my neighborhood. He will never come down to my neighborhood. Joe Wilson doesn't make it over to my neighborhood. I get we have to have about 730,000 people per district. But shouldn't those 730,000 sort of be facing the same federal issues? The combined populations of Lexington and Richland County, both Midland counties, are about 730,000. Wouldn't it make sense to have them in the same district? Wouldn't it make sense to have Charleston and the Low Country represented by one congressional district instead of split by an artificial boundary? But let's not kid ourselves. These new proposed congressional districts are not about representing the people or their issues. It's about entrenching the extreme right of the Republican Party at the exclusion of all others. I took an oath to defend the Constitution, and that oath did not end with my active duty service. Article 1, Section 2 states, "The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States, and with every subsequent term of 10 years in such a manner as they shall by law direct." I ask that you respect the Founding Fathers' intent for reapportionment every 10 years based on the U.S. Census. We have a saying in the Army, don't rush to failure. We are rushing to failure here. You have the opportunity to do the right thing, maintain the status quo, fix and end gerrymandering in 2030, or you can choose to further alienate the people of South Carolina. The choice is yours, but remember, you reap what you sow. Thank you.
Representative Bamberg has a question.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Are you familiar with the line, I guess they still use it in the Army, slow is smooth and smooth is fast?
Yes,
And this is the opposite of that.
we're rushing to failure, yes.
A revenge and retribution map. My question for you is, and I think I know the answer, but do you find it ironic that in a state where the Revolutionary War was won 250 years ago, we now have men and women in elected office in this state being moved about the board as pawns to protect the king? Do you see the irony in that?
Yes, Representative Bamberg, I do. I think the people who put this map together knew exactly what they were doing. Mr. Morgan came down here with less than 24 hours to do the math behind it. But the math ain't mathing.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for your service.
Seeing no other comments, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Sam Gibbons.
Good morning. It's so nice to be able to follow up my friend, Mr. Hensel. I am Sam Gibbons. I'm a resident of Lexington County and a candidate in the Republican primary for District 2. I rise in opposition to H. 5683 and H. 5684. For 8 years, I taught social studies at Drury High School, human geography. We can talk about that later. Most of my students were black and had feelings of apathy and or distrust towards our political system. I worked hard to give them the hope and instill a sense of political efficacy, that their input mattered. I would like to point out that in 1954, segregation was deemed or was ruled unconstitutional, yet South Carolina did not fully integrate its public schools until 1970. The Supreme Court made this decision 9 days ago, and here we are ready to eliminate the one black voice in our delegation to the House of Representatives. So I have to ask, what message does this send to my former students? If you intend to tell me it's about voter choice, then you'll have to first tell me why I've had the same Republican congressional representative since I was 11. I'm a 35-year-old man. We see what you're doing, and just know that George Washington warned us about politicians like you. So let me quote him from his farewell address. Let me warn you against the baneful effects of the spirit of party. The spirit is inseparable from our nature. It exists under different shapes in all governments, but in those of the popular form, it is seen in its greatest rankness and is truly their worst enemy. The alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension, is itself a frightful despotism. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual. And sooner or later, the chief of some prevailing faction turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty. What you are considering here today on the behest of our current president is not only the antithesis of the desires of our first president, but a clear failure to heed his warnings. You have the opportunity to empower every voter in this state. Yet these two bills privilege only the Republican voters in our state. If passed, you will be enshrined as cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men who sought to subvert the power of the people and usurp for yourselves the reins of government. You will become the impostors of pretend patriotism that Washington meant for us to guard against. As we celebrate America 250, I implore you to see this for what it is, a test of our republic, and vote no on these bills. And like Mr. Hensel, I too am a veteran of the United States. Well, he's a veteran of the Army. I was in the Marine Corps. I am glad to take questions, especially dealing with geography, because I taught it to high schoolers for 9 or 8 years.
Seeing no questions, thank you for your testimony.
Very well, John.
Emmanuel Paz. I say that right?
Yeah, you said it right.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. I hope everyone's doing all right. My name is Emmanuel Paz. I'm a student at the University of South Carolina, and I'm vice president of USC's chapter of the NAACP. I'm speaking here today because I'm deeply concerned that this mid-decade redistricting effort would dilute the voting powers of black and minority communities in South Carolina. Why are we choosing to act mid-decade? I'm questioning both the legitimacy and the intent behind this decision coming so closely before a major election season. Redistricting is intended to be transparent, deliberate, and centered on voters. Instead, this process appears rushed, partisan, and disconnected from meaningful public input. When maps are redrawn under political pressure, especially this close to an election, the communities most likely to be harmed are communities that have historically had to fight for fair representation. Black voters and minority voters are not political obstacles to be managed. We are students, workers, families, and citizens of this state. We are citizens whose voices deserve equal weight. If this legislature moves forward without full transparency or without clear analysis of the racial impact of any proposed map, then voters will reasonably see this as an attempt to disenfranchise us. South Carolina already has a 6-to-1 Republican congressional delegation. The clear concern here is that this process is being used to target the one district black voters and Democratic voters have been able to elect the representative of their choice. Whether people call that partisan, redistricting, or something else, the effect would be racial too. I urge the subcommittee not to advance Bill H. 5683 and 5684 and not to participate in a rushed process that undermines representative democracy in South Carolina. Thank you so much.
Alston Lippert. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Alston Lippert. I'm the Associate Pastor of Nurture at Washington Street United Methodist Church. And I'm here today because as a Christian and a United Methodist, I affirm that all people are created in the image of God and have innate worth, meaning that no one person is better than any others. No person is better regardless of their gender, their race, their ethnicity, their party affiliation, or anything else. Consequently, anything that disenfranchises any person for whatever reason is contrary to God's will. Thus, I call on Christians to stand against this mid-decade redistricting push, whose sole purpose is to disenfranchise voters that might vote for the party that's not in power, that's currently in power. In addition, there's been a lot of focus in the last, I don't know how many years, on election integrity and making sure that people don't vote twice. I am really bothered by the testimony from our election commissioner, who said that he had already received over 300 ballots. Now, I believe that voting twice in an election is a felony. So if I had mailed in a ballot, I would be loath to mail in another one, thinking that I might inadvertently vote twice and then be thrown in jail. Now, a lot of the people who mail in their ballots this early live abroad, which means many of them are our military service people and their families. So we sit here and ask people to serve and potentially give their lives for their country, but then do not allow them to vote because they might commit a felony. So please, please, don't rush this effort. Listen to all these people who have talked and testified that we need to do the right thing for our voters and for our state and for our nation and not go down this path. Thank you very much.
Marcurius Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Marcurius Byrd. I live here in Richland County. I'm a graduate of Washington and Lee University and the University of South Carolina School of Law. I'm going to cut my testimony short a little bit because I think Matt Butler talked about what I was going to talk about almost word for word, talking about the disenfranchisement of the people who have already voted. But going through this committee meeting today, it has brought up more emotions than I thought I was going to be thinking about. This is not the state of South Carolina that I want to see. Like, I'm a black Mormon, so I deal with Republicans a lot. What we're doing here today is separating our communities in our state. This is way more partisan of a divide than South Carolina deserves at this moment. Like, I love all of my Republican friends. I love all my Democratic friends, my independent friends, Reform Party friends, all of them. We can't have a future where we are all unified as a state if we keep doing crap like this. Because it's crap. We all know it's crap. At what point do we actually stand up for not just our political parties, but the world, the society that we actually want to live in? Because this is not it. Everybody's talking about all the stuff that is happening and the gerrymandering and the racial stuff. But Jesus freaking Christ, all of us are decent people here. We got to start acting like decent people again and come together. This is something we should not be doing based off of this. I'm cool with redrawing maps. That's a thing we should do. But we should be keeping communities and drawing consensus together. This is ridiculous. Not just on the political side, just for us as human individuals. This is getting ridiculous, and we cannot have a future as a society if we keep doing this. So I'm asking y'all to reject this at this time. Y'all can come back and do maps, and we can come back together. But we all need to be coming together in doing this stuff correctly for the betterment of society, because this is bull crap. Sorry.
Crystal Spain.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of this committee. My name is Crystal Spain, and I am the chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party, but I'm not here to necessarily talk about politics. For some people, redistricting is just politics. For my family, discussions about political power, representation, and voting rights carry a much heavier weight. Right before the 2024 elections, my 77-year-old mother said something to me that stayed with me. She said, "I just can't believe that people want to go back to 1965. Now, my mother grew up during Jim Crow in rural South Carolina. Her family sharecropped. She is one of 14 children. She lived through a South Carolina where black people were second-class citizens by law and by custom. And she remembers exactly what that looked like. More importantly, she remembers what it felt like. She remembers when my uncle was murdered by the Ku Klux Klan in Georgetown County for fishing in a public place to feed his family. She remembers how they searched for him. She remembers when they found his decomposing, drowned body. She remembers the fear that black families lived under. So when she says she can't believe that anybody wants to go back to 1965, she fully understands what that means. And to be clear, I'm not saying that we're living in 1965. I'm saying that when lawmakers repeatedly move to weaken black voting strength, redraw maps after voters have already started voting, or manipulate the rules when political power shifts, it sends a dangerous message that black voices, black communities, and black votes matter less. Because history is a powerful teacher, and its lessons come with warnings. Many people alive today remember when black people in the South were terrorized into submission. They remember when fear was the law, when violence enforced the social order. History also teaches black people something else very clearly. Whenever our political power grows, we are seen as a threat, and there will always be an effort to contain that power. That's just the pattern. And whether intentional or not, actions like these make many South Carolinians feel like their voices are irrelevant. That's why people are here today. That's why people are alarmed. When we are not trapped in the past, we recognize that echoes from the past are warnings for the future. So I desperately urge you all to stop this and vote no. Do not proceed with this. Thank you.
Jamie Harrison.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. You know, for many South Carolinians, particularly black South Carolinians, conversations about voting rights and representation aren't just abstract political debates. They're deeply personal. I testify here today not as the former chairman of the Democratic National Committee or the former chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party, but as an American, black American in South Carolina. You know, I grew up in Orangeburg, South Carolina, and I was raised by my grandparents. My grandfather paved roads, my grandma picked cotton. My grandfather lived much of his early life unable to vote because of Jim Crow. And one of the last things that we did together before he passed away was vote in 2004. I wheeled him into the precinct in Orangeburg, and afterwards we went back home and we sat out on the porch together. And he looked at me and he said, "Jamie, there was a time in this state when I couldn't do that. There was a time in this country in which I was not always considered a whole man. But today we voted." And then he told me something that I will never forget. He said, "Never let anyone tell you that you don't matter. Never let anyone tell you you don't count." My friends, that is why efforts like this concern so many people. South Carolina has a long and painful history when it comes to race and representation. During Reconstruction, South Carolina sent 8 African Americans to the United States Congress. This legislature at one time was majority African American. We had an African American Speaker of the House. We had an African American Attorney General. We had an African American Lieutenant Governor. But after Reconstruction ended and Jim Crow took hold across the South, it took nearly 100 years for South Carolina to send the 9th African American to Congress, and that was Jim Clyburn. 100 years. But for the Voting Rights Act, Jim Crow could possibly still be the law of the land here in South Carolina and across the South. It was the Voting Rights Act that was the medicine that helped cure the cancer of Jim Crow, and finally gave communities that had long been silenced a voice in our democracy. And now, after military ballots have already gone out, we are considering an unprecedented mid-cycle redistricting effort that appears designed to weaken black voting strength, to divide communities of interest, and to create chaos in the middle of an election cycle. Richland County now looks like a political jigsaw puzzle, split into 3 distinct districts. Communities that share common schools, economies, transportation systems, churches, and histories are being carved apart, all for political purposes. Are we proud of that? And honestly, I know that this monstrosity of a map had to be cooked up by some brainiacs, maybe Stephen Miller in Washington, D.C., because what God-fearing South Carolina would put Clemson and the University of South Carolina in the same district? So you know this isn't a South Carolina district. And I would note this as well. I know the Republicans have a redistricting expert here, John Morgan. And John, this is not to disparage you, but courts have found in multiple cases in which you have been a part of that you lack credibility regarding supposedly race-blind maps. And in one case, a court flatly stated that the explanations were simply not credible. And that should concern every member of the subcommittee. We're talking about potentially reopening filing, confusing voters, and forcing taxpayers to pay for a second primary election solely for congressional races. And for what? At a time when South Carolinians are struggling with rising gas prices. And let us not ignore the broader implications here, and I know I'll wrap up here. South Carolina has benefited from bipartisan representation in Washington, D.C. When the Port of Savannah had already secured authorization to deepen its port, Charleston did not have its authorization. You know how it got it? It got it because Jim Clyburn picked up the phone, called Joe Biden. Joe Biden went to Barack Obama and put it in the legislation. You know how I know? Because I was right there when it happened. Nikki Haley couldn't have gotten it done. Lindsey Graham couldn't have gotten it done. It was because we had a Democrat in the White House and a Democrat in Congress who was able to get it done. Now think about it had that not happened. Think about where the South Carolina port would be right now today if Savannah was deep, but we weren't. Think about the billions of dollars we would have lost. Folks, let's do stuff that is good for South Carolina. In 2 years, Donald Trump's going to be taking a cocktail down in Mar-a-Lago. We're going to still be right here. What are we doing for our families? What are we doing for our communities? This is not about Democrats versus Republicans. Strom Thurmond and Fritz Hollins used to work together in Washington, D.C. to bring back every dime that they could for South Carolina. And it didn't matter if it was a Democrat dime or a Republican dime. It was a South Carolina dime. And that is where we need to go back, my friends. And I will say this, Mr. Chairman, and I will sit down. Let the record be clear that Donald Trump, this right-wing Supreme Court, and this legislature can try whatever tricks and tools they want to minimize black voters and weaken black political power. But understand this, we will not go back. And I would simply say this to the members of the committee, deep down you know in your hearts this is not right. And at some point, each of us has to decide what we stand for. Power is temporary. Politics is temporary. But your name, your legacy, and your choices will live on after all of us are gone. With every breath in my body, I will make sure that my sons will not live in a world like my grandparents.
Amelia Luxardo.
Lots of passionate people here today. Amalia Luxardo. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dr. Amalia Luxardo. I serve as the CEO of the Women's Rights and Empowerment Network. At REN, we advocate, research, educate, and convene community in service to women and girls across this entire state. REN exists to empower women and girls in South Carolina so that they can shape their lives free from economic and reproductive barriers. Those issues are inseparable. Without financial stability, we have fewer choices. This includes access to essential health care. Without access to comprehensive reproductive health care, economic independence becomes harder to achieve. None of this is possible without political power. The ability for our communities to secure fair wages, safe workplaces, affordable child care, health care access, and bodily autonomy depends on whether we, the people, can meaningfully influence who governs them. Election rules and district maps are the infrastructure of representation, accountability, and freedom. The way districts are drawn determines whether we can meaningfully advocate for our needs, whether elected officials like yourselves remain accountable to the people that they serve, and whether every South Carolinian has an equal voice in our democracy. When our communities are split apart or maps are redrawn for political convenience, we not only lose representation, but trust in the democratic process as a whole. We deserve to know that our communities are being represented fairly, not divided in ways that diminish voices or predetermine political outcomes. Mid-decade congressional redistricting risks doing exactly that. Redrawing districts in the middle of a cycle without any compelling public need creates the perception that maps, and you've heard it all today, are being adjusted to serve politicians rather than the public. That undermines confidence in our institutions and weakens faith in the principle that voters should choose their representatives and not the other way around. If lawmakers are going to revisit district maps, the process must prioritize transparency, fairness, and meaningful public input. South Carolinians deserve confidence that communities are being kept whole, that fair representation, not partisan advantage, is driving this decision. This is about whether people feel seen, heard, and are fairly represented by their governments. Our communities across the state deserve a process that builds trust, not one that suggests that our voices don't matter. For those reasons, we urge this committee not to move forward with congressional redistricting. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mallory Dittmer.
Okay. All right. Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Mallory Dittmer, and I am here to speak to you today as a current candidate for South Carolina's 5th Congressional District. Team Dittmer has been building this campaign for almost a year now. We have built an organization of nearly 800 volunteers, people invested in positive change in their communities across the current 5th District. We have made hiring decisions within and specific to the current 5th District. We have nearly 800 donations from donors within the current 5th District. I don't know about you, but I think you might need more than $2 million for legal fees if y'all do this. People are angry and are already looking for lawyers to fight for what they've put into this race already. But many of these current volunteers, donors, and supporters, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, would now be shifted outside my district, and they are furious. I think it's obvious to most of us here that, along with disenfranchising black voters across South Carolina, the chaos is the point. Drive division, drive voter apathy, discourage people from ever believing that what they do in local politics matters. Stop the movements of hope like the one we are building from right in their tracks. But let me tell you what happened last night. I was at the Lancaster County Democratic Party meeting where I had the unfortunate opportunity to let everyone know that Washington, D.C. now controls South Carolina. And D.C. says Lancaster County comes out of District 5. Do you know what happened? There was confusion, a few tears, a lot of anger, and then steady, action-oriented resolve. What do we do? Resolve to help to stop this no matter what you do here today. In a county that is on the District 5 chopping block, I left that meeting with the promise of 2 new fundraisers, in May, door knockers that'll follow us wherever we need them, stacks of postcards left behind, ready to be written and sent as soon as we know our lines, and the largest single check I've received to date. Your own party knows this map could backfire, and South Carolina will ensure it will. Just this morning, my state senator, Senator Michael Johnson, you might know him, he's getting to be pretty powerful over there, he said on Facebook, quote, despite redrawing the new 2nd Congressional District in an attempt to oust Congressman Clyburn, I don't think it will work. He goes on to say that he has grave concerns that the 6-1 split will become 5-2 and possibly 4-3. He also expressed concerns over splitting his hometown and my town of Fort Mill in half, while also removing Lancaster County from the 5th District as our growth and infrastructure needs are similar. Now, I know you're targeting black voters with this map, but have you considered the collateral damage that's going to tick off a lot of white voters? Voters that your party is already losing by the day thanks to the man with his thumb on this map? In closing, to the 3 Republican members of this committee, I hope you understand the gravity of this moment. You have the incredible privilege and responsibility to make history today. You have a chance to declare definitively that Washington, D.C. doesn't run South Carolina, that South Carolina runs South Carolina. And I urge you to vote no on these bills.
Hang with us, Representative Bamberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm glad to have somebody who's actually a candidate testify, okay, because y'all are in, and it doesn't matter if somebody's a Republican candidate that's filed or a Democratic candidate, everybody's in the same position.
That's right.
When you are out in these congressional districts, a lot bigger than ours as House members, right?
Yes.
I mean, how do you tell, have people donated to your campaign?
Oh, yes.
Like working South Carolinians?
100%. Almost all of my donors are people, not PACs, not corporations, and my average donation is a low dollar donation. Yes.
And when they donate, and this is something that I was thinking about and talking with Representative Hamilton Grant about, what are the citizens supposed to do when, for some people, they've been campaigning a very long time, and all of these people who work hard for their money, even with gas at $5.50 a gallon, and the economy messed up, and groceries high, and they believe in you so much that they take their after-tax paycheck and they donate to you, and then the slate gets wiped clean. Yep. Is that, as a candidate, do you think that that is fair to the people who believe in your candidacy?
That is completely unfair, both for those who are spending money, but also those who are spending time. It's completely unfair.
What party are you running in? May I ask?
Democratic Party.
Democratic Party.
Yes.
But the answer is the same for Republican candidates too,
Yes.
right?
Yes, and I have plenty of Republican donors. Yes, across the board, doesn't matter. All of us are going to be making major shifts, and the people are just kind of, again, collateral damage in this.
Yeah, because it's not like the election itself. So take us, the primary season in June, right? Mm-hmm. Our lines don't get redrawn. Let's say the South Carolina Senate says, you know what, voter turnout might actually be bad for Republicans in August, so let's push everybody's primary out. Mm-hmm. We're in a different position than you all because you're going to be in a different congressional district, so you got to start over from scratch, right?
That's right.
Has the State Election Commission given you all an answer about donations that people have made to you, however much it is? I don't care if it's 50 cents or if it's $5 million. Have they clarified for you all whether you all can legally take money that was raised to run in one congressional seat and use that money that was solicited from people or given to you by people and use it in a different congressional race? Has anybody given y'all an answer on that?
No, my team and I were just talking about that. We do not have an answer on that.
So under the hypothetical, and this is a very good question, I don't think anybody has the answer to, which is why we shouldn't be doing this. But if people have donated to me, Justin Bamberg, for House District 90, which is composed of X, And then this map passes, and I'm like, you know what? The hell with it. Let me go in and jump in for 2. Can I use my state house campaign donations to run a congressional race? I'll tell you the answer is no. You're not allowed to do that. That's illegal.
That's right.
Right? You have to raise new funds for a new race. So if you do get an answer for that, can you send it in to us?
Absolutely.
So that we can put it a part of the record?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes. Good. Good. Thank you.
Reed Beeman.
Hopefully everybody can hear me. Good morning, members of the subcommittee. So I had prepared something. I went ahead and submitted it, and I was going to try to summarize it a little bit more for y'all. But after my brother Marcurius Berg got up here, I'm feeling some kind of moved weight too. So I wanted to come up here and speak. My grandfather was a diehard conservative. He served in Korea. And he taught me and my brother growing up what it was like and how you should be a good conservative. I'm no longer a conservative. I am a Democrat. And I've been a Democrat for a while now. But I still remember what my grandfather told me one day. When I came in the house, he said, "Son, have you voted today?" And I said, "No, sir, I have not." And he said, "Boy, grab your coat. We're going to go in the truck and we're going to go vote." So he took me down to the voting office so we could vote in the local election. And I was upset that day because I didn't want to leave the house. But my granddad wanted to take me anyway. And he knew that. And he looked at me and he said, "Son, the most important thing you can do for this country is to vote." And he said, "You look at that flag up there hanging above where the voting office is. Y'all can't see the flag, but it's behind y'all." And I've been looking at it, and I've been thinking about it. And my grandfather always said, think about the men and the women who had died for the right to vote. They weren't just white men. They were black men. They were brown men. It didn't matter how old they were, how young they were. They served their country. And I have to sit and look at the flag and think of him and think of that and then look at that damn map up there and see how messed up it is. It is an insult to the very people that are here in South Carolina. It is an insult to veterans. Hell, it's an insult to damn conservatives, too. I can't believe this is where I'm at. I got a son that's 2 years old. He's 2. And he's going to have to grow up with this crap. Think about it, y'all. This isn't just y'all's legacy. It's your kids, your grandkids, every generation to come after you. It will affect them. This has a ripple effect. This is a pebble in a pond that will ripple for hundreds, if not thousands of years. We cannot go back. We have to go forward. And I'm going to leave y'all with this. Courage is contagious. But first, someone must choose to stand. Are y'all ready to stand up? Because I am. I'm here. I'll take questions.
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Dylan Gunnels.
Hello again. My name is Dylan Gunnels. I serve as the Organizing and Advocacy Director at Be the Ones, a nonpartisan South Carolina organization focused on strengthening civic participation across our state. I'm here today to strongly oppose efforts to move forward with rushed and discriminatory redistricting in South Carolina, including advancing bills H. 5684 and H. 5683. At its core, this is about trust. Trust that our democracy is fair, trust that communities are being heard, trust that voters are choosing their representatives and not the other way around. When maps are rushed, manipulated, or drawn behind closed doors, which they have been, that erodes trust. And communities across South Carolina, especially black communities and historically marginalized communities, have every reason to be concerned. Our state has a long history of racial gerrymandering and voter dilution. We cannot pretend that history does not shape this moment. Fair representation means communities have a real opportunity to elect leaders who understand their experiences, their needs, and their realities. These maps are not just lines on paper. They shape whether neighborhoods receive investments, whether concerns are taken seriously, and whether people feel they have power in the decisions that affect their daily lives. When communities are split apart or manipulated for political purposes, people lose faith that their voices matter. And in a moment when distrust in institutions is already high, moving forward with rushed redistricting only deepens confusion, instability, and division. We deserve transparency. We deserve accountability. We deserve a process rooted in fairness, public input, and equal representation, not your political expediency. Democracy works best when people believe the system reflects them, respects them, and values their participation. I urge this committee to reject any effort that advances unfair or discriminatory maps, protects political power over people, or weakens equal representation for South Carolina communities. The last thing I want to say is not in my notes, and I apologize to my colleagues in advance if it gets me in trouble. It does not represent the organization or any organization I represent. It represents me and my God. But what does the Lord require of you? But to walk humbly, to love mercy, and to do justice. It is not a recommendation, it is a requirement. And doing justice is an act. So many people in these chambers love to dictate what I get to do in my life, and so many of our communities get to do in our lives, and they love to stamp Jesus on it. But what does the Lord require of you? Because so many of you in these chambers are given the opportunity that a very small majority will ever get to literally do justice, to enact justice. Our neighbors are hungry, they're unhoused, they can't get health care, they can't get education. I could go on and on and on. These things are fixable. But somehow we can't make the time to fix the problems that are actually problems, but we can come together and do this. We can have these conversations, but we can't do justice. So my question to you is this: well done, my good and faithful servant, or depart from me, you workers of iniquity, I never knew you. The choice is yours. My prayer for you is that you are convicted. My prayer for you is that you are haunted by the stories of the human beings that you affect every day. Thank you for not looking me in the face at that moment of the testimony, and have a great day. Amen.
Reverend Bennett Mazik. Did I say that correctly, Reverend?
Not quite.
It was Miss Trader's fault. I asked her, and she...
That's okay. It's a good old...
Please correct me.
Mazik.
Mazik. Thank you, sir.
And it could be because I'm from Charleston, or the Charleston area. Thank you to the chairman and the members of the subcommittee, and thank you to my fellow citizens that are here from all over South Carolina that have not counted robbery to be in this place at this historic moment in our state. As was said, my name is Reverend Burnett William Mazik, and I stand to ask and to speak in opposition to H. 5684 and H. 5683. I'm usually here before you to speak on behalf of the South Carolina Association for Community Economic Development, but today I rise to speak on behalf of my prophetic calling in the ministry as a ordained deacon in the United Methodist Church. And I believe this was a prophetic calling, especially today, since my clergy colleague sought to appeal to your moral elements, and my colleague that spoke just before me used the same scripture that I'm going to read from, which is the prophet Micah, who declared, "What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God?" I'm here to express a prophetic opinion that this effort, this redrawing of the congressional maps in mid-decade is not just, merciful, nor an expression of humility. We know we as humans are flawed, and we need correction from time to time. But there's grace and mercy for those of us who seek it. I was born in 1959, before the Voting Rights Act was passed and before there was anyone elected to Congress who looked like me or had similar life experiences as myself. But fortunately, the justice of God prevailed, and a more realistic representation of South Carolina was seated in Washington, D.C. It's my prophetic opinion that the process and the product that you are pursuing is unjust and disingenuous to the residents of South Carolina. To rush this process without robust input from the citizens of this state is not right. The last I checked, this is still a constitutional republic, and the people of South Carolina are the sovereign voices of this state. We're seeing today a process that is rushing to pass a congressional redistricting plan that will cheat voters out of their fair elections. Redistricting is supposed to happen every 10 years based on new census data, and to have this process rush as quickly without the voices of the citizens of South Carolina giving their input is wrong, unjust, and unfair. But before I take my seat, I will say that I have often bragged about this legislative body because I've worked with many in this body in a bipartisan way that have passed legislation that spoke to the real needs of South Carolinians. I brag to my colleagues who work in other southern states, and they've contacted me to see how we were able to get certain things done. And I said our legislature is different because it feels and sees the need of South Carolinians first, and they choose to do the right thing. I'm asking you to do the right thing. I'm asking you to look to the higher morals that is within you and to reject these pieces of legislation that will move us backwards, not forward. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for your comments, Reverend. Members of the subcommittee, we've been going for an extended period, but we do have several more folks. My thought is if we could press on just a little bit longer and give a few more folks the opportunity to speak so that we do try and hear from as many folks as possible, and then perhaps take a very brief break before we actually get on the legislation. So with that, Gail Awan.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of this committee. I'm Dr. Gail Awan, President and CEO of the Urban League of the Upstate, and I am speaking in opposition of H. 5683 and H. 5684. I stand with my colleagues of the Columbia Urban League and the Charleston Area Urban League. We are affiliates of the National Urban League, part of a network that provides direct service to over 2 million people through 90 affiliates and 300 communities nationwide. Here at home, we serve communities across South Carolina through programs like education and workforce development, housing, entrepreneurship, and economic mobility, and health and wellness initiatives. We are a nonpartisan organization focused on empowering communities to thrive. And I proudly serve the upstate, where I have offices in Greenville, Spartanburg, and Anderson County. We provide services to rural and urban residents regardless of race, political affiliation, and background. And I urge lawmakers to oppose any effort to redraw South Carolina's congressional maps. First and foremost, redistricting would erase the voting power of black voters. Drawing district lines this close to an election divides our community, it weakens public confidence, and it will drag us back to Jim Crow era mapmaking, creating the perception that political interests are being prioritized over the voices of South Carolinians. You know, I keep a newspaper clipping of the day in 1972 when Vernon Jordan, the president of the National Urban League, came to Greenville to charter my affiliate. And he met with some of the upstate's most influential giants of industry, business, community leaders, and a group of elected bipartisan political officials, demonstrating that together we are stronger. My favorite Vernon Jordan quote says, "But there will come a time and a place to give back, and each individual will recognize that time and that place." And for me, that time is now and that place is here. And I believe, like you, that service is indeed a privilege and a personal responsibility, and that's why I'm here. I urge you to protect the integrity of the process, reject efforts that undermine public trust and confidence, and to show the nation that South Carolina prioritizes and supports a fair and transparent public and deliberate process. When you look at this map, it's misleading because it looks like lines and squares and boxes. But as this entire process, but as Whitney M. Young Jr. said, first and foremost, this map must be a voice of the voiceless and hope for the hopeless. Since 1910, the Urban League has worked with our elected officials and our business community because we know that it is truly possible for us all to represent the communities that we have the honor and the privilege to serve together. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you so much.
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Marty Brown.
Hello, my name's Marty Brown, and I am against postponing the primaries, which are already underway. I'm also against the last-minute redistricting, which is a clear power grab to disenfranchise Democratic voters. We need fairly drawn maps based on the normal census process, not a slapdash effort to silence the voice of 40% of South Carolinians. I'm also against costing the taxpayers millions of extra dollars when we can barely afford gas, we can barely afford groceries, we can barely afford college tuition for our kids. Teachers and staff members in my school district are losing their jobs right now because there's not enough money in the state and in the districts. And now you want to waste millions of dollars on rigging an election to steal away even more of the people's voice. This is wrong. We need politicians to focus on the real issues facing South Carolinians. Thank you.
Rob McHugh.
I don't want to be here today, but I have to be here today. And honestly, Mr. Jordan, you don't look happy to be here today. I mean...
It's Friday.
Well, but what's it feel like? I want to ask y'all, what's it feel like these days? Because a lot of us are having some hard and deep feelings in our bodies, in our bones, in our shortness of breath, when we're looking over our shoulder saying, what next? What chaos, what madness is next? And are you going to add fuel to the fire of that chaos, or are you going to be a voice of reason in real tumultuous times? Are you going to speak for reason? I come as a lifelong South Carolinian and someone who basically was forced to go to segregationist schools. Yeah, I didn't choose that. I wanted to go to public school and enjoy. I was the only person born, first person in my immediate family born after Voting Rights Act passed. So, I was sent to a reactionary school. So I didn't get a really good education. I didn't get a full education. I had to look for that. I had to hunt for that. I had to find out that we were once an amazing state. Once an amazing state that led Reconstruction. We were once the most progressive state. I grew up learning that we're the most backwards state. So I invite you to embrace the spirit of Reconstruction that once was over this land of South Carolina and vote against 5683, 5684. I also come to you as somebody who has worked elections as a poll worker. And I can say that it's a sacrifice of each person who comes to work at an election. They take time out of their day, time to train for one of the longest days of their lives. You get there way early and you stay way late till the last vote is counted. And this is just going to gum up the works. On a practical level, this is just straight up going to gum up the works even more and add to those people's expenses. I know people who have, Miss Barbaretta, bless you, who was my poll manager, poll clerk for 50 years. There are people who have dedicated their lives to making sure voting is run well. And this is a slap in the face to all those people. So yeah, sit and squirm a little bit, please. Thank you.
James Jones.
Good morning, Chairman Jordan, members of the subcommittee. My name is James A. Jones. I spent more than 20 years working with the United States Department of Justice, United States Department of Homeland Security as a federal prosecutor, and now work as a private immigration defense attorney. I also serve as an elected official at Spartanburg County School District 7 Board of Trustees, and I am a candidate to help out Representative Whitmore and Bamberg as South Carolina House 31. I stand in opposition in part to this process and in part to these maps. They say the arc of history bends toward justice. I'd say the arc of morality bends toward more justice. And the arc of this House of Representatives should bend toward fairness, toward fair representation, fair maps. So that would suggest that these maps that you presented should not be honored. Part of my work as an immigration defense attorney, I help people from all over the world escape tyranny. But when Alexis de Tocqueville, 100 years ago, looked at democracy in America, he warned that we were leaning toward the tyranny of the majority. And now you propose maps that suggest that winner takes all. You got the clear majority in the House. The Senate, Democrats and other independents get nothing out of their representation. That's not democracy. That's not fairness. That's not morality. And I hope that's not what you swore when you swore your oath to represent. We have soldiers fighting all over the world to defend democracy. That must mean something. And I'll tell you one from some of our friends from Haiti. They have this saying that Constitution c'est papier, bayonet c'est fait. People have told us over and over again today that if we don't protect and defend the democracy that we have, and their vote counts for nothing, their voices will be raised and elevated to a point where it may be raised to something like the bayonet, steel, as opposed to the ballot, electing representatives that would fairly represent them. But I did say I oppose in part what you're doing today. Because up in Spartanburg, I hope you follow me up 26, we have a school district that about the same time Representative Clyburn took office, through a settlement, decided that we'd have 4 single-member districts that were designed to represent blacks in Spartanburg School District 7, and there will be 1 super district, majority district, that would have 5 members representing the rest of Spartanburg. Here, a district is 70% impoverished, 70% minority, but the board is guaranteed to have a majority of its trustees that don't represent and reflect the district. So if you want to redistrict something, come with me to Spartanburg. Let's get 7 single-member districts, 9 single-member districts, so that we can have fair representation in Spartanburg School District 7, and let's protect that flag, and let's protect the democracy that we have. Thank you.
Dr. Lydia Willingham. Did I say that right? Come on up.
Good morning. Yes, you did. To the chair and to the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to address the issue. I rise to say that I'm in opposition to House Bill number 5683 and 5684. So when you look at this, it's a problem. And you would say the problem is mapping. The oxygen here in the room, oxygen, it's from the voices of the people, and we can't breathe. Gas prices going up, food going up. We just cannot breathe. We cannot take mapping issues like this. You know, we got every 10 years to do the census. This is a rush job. In the classroom, as teachers, we don't rush our students. We prepare them to go out to have a living and a future, and a sustainable future. But with this map, generation after generation will be suppressed. So, shall we have rig mapping? No. We need to prioritize the voices of the South Carolinians. When I look at this South Carolina, I love South Carolina, and nothing could be funner than being in South Carolina. Our state is shaped like a piece of pie. Yeah, I love it. But the way y'all are shaping it is messing up our map, and the map is not mapping, as we say. But here today, I would like you to know that I represent women of South Carolina. I do women grouping, and the women are not happy. And when mama's not happy in the house, nobody's happy. We're just not happy with this map. So how about knowing that if you're going to represent the people, we need that this mapping issue to be put aside, and we cannot think that we can go into an election and then change the process. We've already done voter education. When we educate and tell the people, okay, it is time to go to the primaries, and then you want to say, no, let's change the process midstream, that is not right. This does not help South Carolina people. And some of us understand what the real technical issue is here. This is going to help another population or another group of another gain political power, and that is not right. It should be equal and fair justice for all. I would like you to understand that in crafting such a bill as this, it hurts the minority population. I would like you to change your way of thinking. You know, a long time ago, this state was in a battle. And the battle was won a long time ago. And I have you to know, as a lay pastor, I know the victory is going to be in Jesus. I believe and I pray that this process will be over soon. But there's always another thing to take us back. I don't think South Carolina can backslide this time. You're at the forefront. You can do something about this. You can make history by changing. You don't have to do what Washington is asking you to do. If Washington asks you to do a wrong, does a wrong make a right? Anyhow, that's food for thought. You're going to do what you want to do. But when the citizens go to the poll to vote, we will vote, but we can't vote you out because you redistricted where our voices doesn't matter. Okay? But everyone has the option of getting this right. You have the option. You have the choice. You can do it. Do it now. Do it for South Carolina, the state that we all love. Thank you for the process and speaking to you today.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. We have been going for well over 2 hours, so members, I think let's take a quick 5-minute stretch bathroom break, and then we'll come back. All right. All right, first, let me thank everyone who's attended today. I know it's in no one's schedule to be here this Friday morning, but I want to say thank you for all those who took time to be here. Also, while we've been going at this for several hours and we've heard from many folks, we did not get to hear from everyone who wished to speak today. I would encourage you, if you did not get to speak, or if you did get to speak and you'd like for your comments to be part of the record, as I expressed in the meeting earlier, please get those to us, email those to us. Thank you, Ms. Crater. And we can provide this in another way as well, probably, but it would be to our House Judicial, HJUD, Constitutional Laws at schouse.gov. So if you can send your comments to that, and we can, if anyone has after the meeting questions about that, to make sure you get that email address correct, we can provide that for you. But please email your comments so they can be considered and part of the record. All right, 2 bills on the agenda today. First is 5684, which is, as I explained in the beginning of the meeting, that is not the map. That is the what I've called the process bill that deals with dates and things like that. Primary sponsor, Representative Rankin. Any comments from members of Representative Bamberg? I think you had a comment as to H5684. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 quick comments. The first of which, the bill itself, paragraph E. Above all, and this would outweigh partisan politics, it outweighs what the president wants, it outweighs what some of the public want, is our duty to the Constitution and citizens' rights to vote. And in paragraph E, the last sentence says, no votes cast in the June 9th, 2026 statewide primary for candidates for U.S. House may be counted for these purposes. And why is that problematic? As a civil rights guy, in my view of the law, there is a difference between those people who are looking forward to voting on June 9th and those who have already cast their ballots. And should the South Carolina General Assembly pass a law that says none of those people who have already voted shall have their votes cast I believe that the state of South Carolina will be violating their constitutional right to vote. And I think we end up with a class action lawsuit, among other things. So I think that's problematic. But I will remind, and this is not for every Republican in this state, but it is for some who are beating the drum that we do need to be doing this and that we should listen to the demands of President Donald Trump. And I'm going to read this, and to the Republicans out there, you'll be familiar, as a lot of us are. I do not choose to be a common man. It is my right to be uncommon. If I can seek opportunity, not security, I want to take the calculated risk to dream and to build, to fail and to succeed. I refuse to barter incentive for dole. I prefer the challenges of life to guaranteed security, the thrill of fulfillment to the stale calm of utopia. I will not trade freedom for benevolence, nor my dignity for a handout. I will never cower before any master, save my God. It is my heritage to stand erect, proud and unafraid, to think and act for myself, enjoy the benefit of my creations, to face the whole world boldly and say, quote, I am a free American. Now, for those of us who know, that is a quote from an author that was transitioned and turned into the South Carolina Republican Creed. And I would just ask that everybody remember, including Republican leaders in this state, your creed. Because if your creed means something, and if your honor means something, it's time for you to do the opposite of what we're doing right now, which is cowering. Not to God, but to President Donald Trump. And the fact that we are here, I think it's time for some backbones, as I said yesterday from the House floor. It's time for some backbones to stiffen a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any additional comments from members of the subcommittee? Representative Wetmore, you're recognized.
Really just more for the benefit of everyone here, I will say that I have a lot of strong feelings and thoughts about this, none that I could probably express more eloquently than my colleague, Representative Bamberg, but if you are interested in my attempt, I refer you to the comments I made in the Rules Committee earlier this week. But with that, out of respect for the committee, we'll sort of hold my other comments. Thank you.
All right, the matter before us is H 5684 unamended. Roll call is required and ordered.
Representative Jordan?
Aye.
Representative Bamberg?
No.
Representative Mitchell? Representative Newton?
Aye.
Representative Wetmore?
No.
The bill receives a favorable report with 3 in favor and 2 against.
That puts us on 5683. Chairman Newton, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Consistent with your announcement at the outset of the meeting that you did not intend to seek a vote on 5683 today, I move that we now adjourn.
All right, there's a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are hereby adjourned.
Shame on you.
Shame.
Shame. Hope y'all get voted out except the 2 Democrats. Shame on you. Or all up for re-election.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay.